I never knew that. I've never heard. I think a lot of people don't. You think of it because it's a natural supplement, and you don't. I think most people aren't aware, or don't think of it as actually being a statin and having same statin side effects.
Yeah, and that's a problem. People don't want to research anything on their own. I've had to tell people, arsenic and cyanide are natural too. I don't recommend that you take them.
This is Healthy Living, where we discuss healthy options for humanity. I'm Michael Laine, and our special guest today is our very own Dr. Val. Dr. Val is a retired naturopathic physician and RN with over 40 years in acute care field, which consists of emergency, intensive, and cardiac care, home health and home hospice, and a published author in the health and nutrition field. She is the past host of the Enlightened Medicine Show and The Healthy Truth, the wild side of medicine. How you doing today, Dr. Val?
Well, things are going good. How about
Good.
yourself, Michael?
Good. Going good. Going good. Can't complain. Nobody listens anyways.
That's right.
That's right. But I am excited about this topic, which is
Yeah.
cholesterol and statin drugs. What's it all about? I will have to say this is near and dear to my heart, and that's pun intended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to get into all that, aren't we?
We're going to get it. We're going to get into it. And let's do that right now. So with cholesterol and statin, most people know, kind of what it all relates to, but what's the main culprit to clogged arteries?
It's usually the LDL cholesterol. That's low density lipoprotein. It's kind of like a sticky paste. It's meant to repair tears in the arterial walls, so it's supposed to be there. It's made of large molecules of fluffy, sticky cholesterol. And over time, and with more injuries to the arterial walls, it can actually build up enough to totally occlude an artery. And then you start hearing the words angioplasty and stent placement and exciting things like that.
Yes.
So if you want to know more about how that all happens, you'd have to go further back than just cholesterol. You have to look into German New Medicine, which does a great job of identifying initial causes. So basically, there's a shock that causes damage in the brain, and you can actually see shock waves on the MRI. Very interesting, jagged concentric circles. And then it sends faulty impulses down the line as a warning that we all pretty much ignore due to ignorance of the process. So the simple version is inflammation is the basis of all disease. Stop the inflammatory process, and then the body can heal itself. So here's a fun factoid that I just learned recently, because, you can learn something new every day. So what I learned is CPR is effective in only 1 out of 10 heart attack patients.
Wow.
Whereas if you put ice on the head of a heart attack patient, that results in success 5 out of 10 times. So 50%
Wow.
just with ice to the head. Now, who would have thought?
Yeah.
It's amazing, some of this stuff. So, you look at that and you go, okay, well, what's really going on here then? So, cholesterol is, first of all, I just want to say cholesterol is not the problem. Okay. It's a
No.
solution. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But basically, it happens because of arterial damage. So, there's a tear in the intima of the artery. The cholesterol goes along and acts like spackle. So we'll get into that a little bit more.
And I've heard that before. And gosh, I can remember. And we'll get into this. I know down further here because I've had some personal experience with that. But God, I can remember even just your conventional medical doctor telling me way back, about when cholesterol, eggs became an issue or this and that, and some believed in it, some didn't. And picking out numbers. So But like you said, cholesterol is there for a reason, and they always seem to find a way to get around it so they can push out their pharmaceutical drugs. Um, and that being said, cholesterol is considered to be, on that note, the cause of, cardiovascular disease, but is it really, and why should we have, why would we have cholesterol in our bodies, if it was so dangerous?
Well, we'll get into that. There's actually a lot more to it than people know. So first, let's take a look at how it's determined that someone needs to lower their cholesterol. The standard test for that is known as a lipid panel. That tests for various types of cholesterol. So you have your total cholesterol, which is your overall cholesterol level. Then you have low density lipoprotein, LDL. That's what's called bad cholesterol. And that can collect in blood vessels as it's there to repair tears in the intima or interior of the artery walls. And conventional theory states that this will increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. Then you have high density lipoprotein, HDL. That's the good type. And that helps reduce the risk of the damaging cholesterol. And then you have triglycerides, and excess amounts of this type are believed to cause cardiovascular disease and pancreatic inflammation. In reality, this is what our hormones are made of. So you want a certain amount of it. So now we get into the numbers. So total cholesterol, the range is about 200 to 240. So 200, it's okay. 240, it's over. And that's 200 to 240 milligrams per deciliter. Okay, then in HDL, or good cholesterol, you want it above 60. LDL, bad cholesterol, below 100 to 190. And there is a difference. There's quite a few things that are going to change that limit. For people with diabetes, they want it below 70 milligrams per deciliter. And your triglycerides, the range is about 150 to 500. Now, here's the interesting thing. A lipid panel does not tell the difference between exogenous and endogenous, or outside versus internal cholesterol. So, you want to stop all fatty acid supplements and avoid fatty foods for 3 days before getting a lipid panel test, or you're going to get false high positives. You want to avoid being put on statin drugs due to trying to get good fats into your diet, because that's kind of a not fun thing. So most of the doctors won't even tell you that if they know it.
No, they don't.
And yeah, and then they'll also tell you that, they can't tell the difference between whether it's the good, made by your body stuff or whether it's from your diet. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but basically my exasperation with this kind of stuff is that, okay, you don't know whether it's endogenous or exogenous. You're just looking at the total and you're looking at the types. If you try to limit somebody too much on cholesterol, they're just going to make their own. So, then you look at familial hypercholesterolemia. We'll get into that too.
That's really, I have never heard that about, because I've had many lipid panels done. I've never been told about the 3 days, avoiding fatty foods and all that. You do the fast overnight. That's about it. That's all they lead you on to believe. And that's good enough.
Yeah. It's not good enough.
Yeah. Obviously. Yeah. It's not good enough. And I think we all know that, statin drugs, that's a huge moneymaker for the pharmaceutical industry. So they're going to lean to where things line up to where they can get you on those statin drugs. So, and I have a story on that down the line here. These numbers, I always found interesting because I'll never forget way back in the day when this started to become a thing. And nowadays I know they split it down with the LDL and HDL a little more. And I've had doctors tell me that's a more important way to look at it versus the total cholesterol. But I'll never forget that magic 200 number for total cholesterol. And I had at the time, my MD at the time said, we got talking about it. And he goes, because I think my total cholesterol at the first time was about 212, 215. And he was like, you're fine. I go, well, you're not supposed to go over to 200? He goes, he goes, they just they didn't know where to draw the line at. And that's pretty much where he almost pretty much implicated that it was an arbitrary place. They just picked 200, almost just picked it out of the air, and that's where they drew the line. If you're over 200, you're considered high cholesterol, and and you need to take these measures or go on their statin drugs or whatever. Luckily, he was one that didn't believe in that, and he felt even being at 210 or 215 was no big deal, and not to worry about it. But so many, I still get and see that 200 magic number for total is such a taboo thing. So that all being said, with these numbers, where do these numbers come from?
Well, let's go into a little bit of history here. And this was stuff I didn't know either. I had to look it up because, I've known for a long time since I was in my 20s that the whole cholesterol thing was pretty much a scam.
Yeah.
And I'll get into that in a little bit too. So let's go back to the history. So it started in 1769 when solid cholesterol was discovered in gallstones. So basically they cut a gallstone open and they went, ooh, cholesterol. Then in the 1950s, in the Framingham study, which was huge, by the way, and went over a large number of years, thousands of people in that one, plus with the discovery of the LDL receptor in 1974 and the discovery of a thing called compactin in 1976, that resulted in at least 11 Nobel Prizes. That resulted in the creation of statin drugs.
Oh.
So there's other tests to consider in the lipids picture, such as apolipoprotein. So there's 3 of the 5 apolipoprotein types that are considered to be familial hypercholesterolemia. And interestingly, low-fat diets have been found to be unsuccessful in reducing LDL cholesterol, and they also lower HDL in those familial hypercholesterolemia cases. So that's one of those cases where, you can knock all the cholesterol out of the diet, they're still going to have high cholesterol because their body's going to make it, the liver will make it. So that's not a surprise, considering our bodies actually need good fats, not only for proper cholesterol production, but also for the health of the brain and nervous system. So low-fat diets are actually bad for most people, and there were a whole lot of people that really got sick and really went into some intense disease states when the whole low-fat diet thing came out. That was a travesty. So, anytime somebody asks me about a low-fat diet now, I roll my eyes. It's just, I'm like, oh no, here we go again. It makes no scientific sense.
Right.
You do a low-fat diet. It's just not a healthy diet. So then the other thing that you have to consider is the blood type. So that has a lot to do with how much cholesterol is safe. But most conventional doctors tend to think that that's false. And they really don't know anything about the diet, but they're going to tell you it's all a bunch of hogwash. So let me explain the difference here. Type O blood types can have a total cholesterol up to about 270 without much problem, whereas the type A should have theirs down around 100. And of course, other factors must be considered as well, such as smoking, poor diet, obesity, exercise, stress, etc. And smoking is a big one because that causes the LDL to stick to the arterial walls more. And so if you're a smoker, you have a tendency to have more problems with that.
Well, I feel good since I'm type O. That gives me a lot more leeway there.
Yeah, well, it has to do with eating meat.
Right.
So you eat meat and red meat is not the big bugaboo that they like to tell you it is. It's really not. Of course, if you do too much of anything, then you have a problem. So, basically it's a thing of just moderation, as I like to say, everything in moderation,
Right.
include moderation.
So I know and you hear, and you've touched on it a little bit already, because we get two places we get our cholesterol, dietary, and then our liver produces it. And I know, see, and I'm looking back in the day, I remember, God, several of my coworkers, after they go to get their lipid panel, and their cholesterol's too high, and, all of a sudden the doc says, well, I either put you on a statin drug or you try to do it with your diet. And of course, they always want to try to do it with their diet first. And majority of them, 90% of them fail. Like you just said, it just low fat diet doesn't work. And I remember they'd be all bummed out because now they'd have to go on these, statin drugs because they couldn't do it with their diet, no matter how hard they try. So that all being said, what is the main difference between dietary cholesterol and the cholesterol that's produced by your liver? Yeah, I mean, like, is it the same type of cholesterol, or is there a difference? And how's that all work?
There's a difference because when the blood passes through the liver, it goes from our intestines, goes through the intestines as the food is broken down and goes into the bloodstream, and the first pass goes through the liver. The liver is going to put things together in the compounds that are needed by the body. So that's different than, it's different in the stage of cholesterol in, and then the liver is going to create endogenous. Okay. So exogenous is dietary, in other words, outside of the body, and endogenous is internal, produced by the liver in this case. And also, an interesting thing to note about that with cholesterol is that the body needs cholesterol in order to produce vitamin D.
Oh,
So most people don't think about that either. And we've got like
no.
a huge amount of people that have a problem with vitamin D. They don't get enough. And, how are they going to get enough if they're on statin drugs and that step is being interfered with? And it is. So about 30% of the cholesterol that we show in our blood test comes from dietary sources, and 70% is made in our bodies.
Wow.
Yeah. The body prefers that's put together by the liver. So most people around the world, even those eating an abundance of high cholesterol foods, have no problem with excess cholesterol in their blood. It's just kind of these, first world problems. That makes you go, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So cholesterol is not only used to make hormones, it's an essential component of cell walls. They need to be flexible. So synthetic fats made from seed oils like margarine and other problematic substances can cause the cell walls to get stiff. That stops the correct transport of necessary components back and forth across the membrane. That's a problem.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. So, with all that talking about the fats and synthetic fats and everything, brings up, what are bad fats? What should we really avoid or just eat sparingly? You hear good, everything about good fats, bad fats, but the first thing I would think to focus on would be the bad fats, possibly.
What we're doing at Global Healing Institute is we're taking 25 years of research and we're putting it into a simple approach to teach people.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you even need to see clients per se. You should be your own certified natural health coach. And for your family, you can be a certified natural health coach. Because it teaches you everything you need to know about why you have different conditions, how to clean up your internal environment, how to clean up your external environment, the importance of cleansing and healing the gut, the importance of cleansing and healing the liver, the importance of getting the parasites out of your body.
We're here to teach what good health means in our lives, creating a learning platform that motivates and inspires you to continue to learn the things that you're passionate about, ultimately so you can be the best coach for your client.
Well, now this is going to differ. If you're looking at the conventional quote unquote wisdom, they'll say that you need to avoid eggs, oils, animal flesh, especially red meat,
Yep.
full fat dairy products, fried foods, processed foods, and desserts. So let's just take a moment to horrify all of those who've been told they need to take drugs to lower cholesterol. Oh boy. Okay, I've got a lot of experience with this with my patients. And I've had mine go high. I had a couple things happen to me many years ago that just about took my liver out. And it was it was carbon monoxide poisoning. It was pretty bad,
Oh, wow.
and I had no idea what was going on. And so my triglycerides were up in, gosh, I think they went up like 2,700 or something. I mean, it was huge.
Wow.
And I basically healed all that. Once I figured out what was going on, I was able to heal all that within a few months, to the point where I went to my doctor at the time, was an internal medicine doctor. And he looked at my lab results and he goes, "How did you do this?" I said, "I'm good at what I do." It's really not that hard. You just have to know what to take to help you, and just get past it. But let me give you another horror story. This will make people that are on the low-fat diet and statin drugs right now probably fall off their chairs. When I was in my 20s, I was having some stress-related stuff going on, and so I go into the doctor, and he says, "Well, let's get a lipid panel." I said, "Okay." He comes back, and he's like, "Oh my God." He said, "I have never seen anybody with a total cholesterol as low as yours." It was 90.
Wow.
So now this was like 50 years ago. Okay. So at that point, this is where they want diabetics to be lower than. Remember, I said 70 for
Right. Yeah.
diabetics? I
Yes.
was at 90, and this guy had never even heard of anybody having a total cholesterol that low. So he said, "Well, what have you been eating?" Here's the horrifying part. So all of you that are on statin drugs and on a low-fat diet, you better sit down. Okay, I was eating at least 3 dozen eggs a week
Wow.
and a pound of a really good fatty red steak every day, at least a pound, you know, sometimes another half a pound on top of that. Along with that steak, I was eating mushrooms boiled in butter, and then I was pouring butter all over the steak and the mushrooms.
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
people that are on the carnivore diet now are cracking up going, "Well, of course."
Yeah.
And other people are horrified. And my doctor was horrified. He about fell off of his chair. And I said, "Oh, yeah, and I eat a lot of cheese too. I love cheese." So I was eating all kinds of hard cheeses, which are pretty fatty. And this guy just couldn't believe it. Now with the carnivore diet craze, it makes sense because I'm a type O, and type O's are carnivores. Or they do best with carnivore unless they have just transitioned or they're about to transition into a type A, which does happen. There are mutations that started this whole blood type thing long, long time ago. So, when your doctor starts asking you what you're eating, most of them have not had more than one class on nutrition. And these guys are going to try to tell you what to eat.
Right.
Seriously? So, think about what is involved in your current status if you're on a statin drug. I mean, what's your familial input on that? What are the genetics? What kind of a diet have you been on your entire life? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you take a lot of over-the-counter or prescription drugs? All that stuff plays into it.
Right.
So you really need to take all of that into consideration. And this is basically why, you'll see me on the chats telling people you need to go see a good holistic doctor. Somebody that understands how the body works. And most conventional doctors really don't understand how the body works, which is why they can't heal anybody.
So I bet your doctor, when you told him everything you're eating, he just, yeah. How do you respond to that? I mean, did
he actually reeled back in shock and about fell off of his stool. Seriously. Yeah.
Wow. I bet because that goes against all the conventional wisdom. And it destroys their program to be able to get you on statins. It's like,
absolutely.
I almost feel like, you walk into your average medical doctor and they've already got a program and a protocol lined up. How can I get this person on statins?
Well, nowadays, back then it wasn't so common.
Right.
Back then they were still trying to control it with diet for the most part. But, like I said, you have to look at what is that person doing? Now, I was not sitting around behind a computer. I was working all day. And when I got done with work, I went and jumped on my horse and went riding from about 5 o'clock until midnight. And I did endurance riding. So that's where you have to jump off of the horse and run up the hill next to the horse.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's pretty intense exercise. And then I would come home and I would go into the spa center. So I always made sure I had an apartment that had full 24-hour spa access. And then I would swim and I would do weightlifting and do all kinds of cardio and go into the sauna and the steam room and all that kind of stuff. And then I'd go to bed for about 3 hours and then I'd hop back up and do it all over again. So, the fact that I was exercising that much and that intensely every day made a huge difference. And it made it very easy for me to eat that way and still be really healthy. And I had, pretty good health, except for this one thing I was going through that was really stress. They didn't really count stress as much back then, but it was really stress related from the job that I was in. And as soon as I got out of that job, I didn't have the problem anymore. But nowadays stress is recognized a lot better.
Yeah, it's a big thing. So having a regular exercise regimen is really important.
Yeah, it's vitally important because when you're eating, especially for a carnivore diet, when you're eating a lot of that, it's not a high fat diet. People think it's high fat. It's not. It's high protein, moderate fat. And again, it depends on your blood type. Type O's do great on that. So do type B's. Type A's, no. I've had to take care of plenty of type A's that erroneously went on that diet and had a problem. It doesn't happen right away.
Right.
It takes a while to develop, but there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, with the blood types, because I'm aware of the blood type diet, but I never would have related it to also, cholesterol and what you can handle and the difference of the blood types and what they can handle with cholesterol. That's a good point to remember. So getting into statin drugs, what are some of the side effects of statin drugs?
Oh boy, now this is one of my favorite subjects because they claim, they being conventional doctors and pharmaceutical companies, that their drugs are safe and effective.
Of course they do.
I wonder if we heard that one before. Mm-hmm. However, they come with a long list of problematic side effects that even cardiologists don't pay any attention to. For instance, they ignore the fact that people with low blood pressure are more likely to not need statin drugs and may, in fact, have syncopal episodes, that's fainting, along with diarrhea, weakness, dizziness, headache, nausea, muscle pain, sleep disturbances, and low platelet counts. These are fairly common side effects. And it's claimed there's nothing to worry about with that, and that statins have up to a 37% reduction in cholesterol. I think they faked those studies, honestly, because I can tell you in my own practice, I had people that were on statin drugs. I took them off of those, and they hadn't dropped their lipid panel very much at all. And when I put them on the natural stuff, it dropped it so fast and with no side effects that I had their cardiologist calling me and asking me what I was doing.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was very common. Went through that for 20 years or so. Less common side effects are that people get sick easier. They have memory problems, hair loss, paresthesias, that's pins and needles, liver inflammation, pancreatitis, itchy rash, acne, loss of libido, and erectile dysfunction. So here's the problem. The rate-limiting step in cholesterol synthesis is the HMG-CoA reductase pathway, which is what statin drugs work on. They inhibit that. Since that pathway is also a precursor for CoQ10, which is vital for mitochondrial function, this is where most of the statin drug side effects come from. So the major problem with statin drugs is that they deplete CoQ10, which we need or we will die. If that falls by 25%, we get sick. If it falls by 75%, we die. That's serious.
Yeah, it is. That's very serious. And it makes more sense now why a lot of doctors have their statin drug patients get on CoQ10. I know that was a case for me. I had a cardiologist who, because I had to have angioplasty done, This was a while back. And so after that episode, naturally, and I knew nothing. I mean, none of this stuff was out. So they prescribed me on statins, and I forget which. I think I was on Lipitor and Zocor. I can't remember which one was first, and it reduced my cholesterol too much. So then he switched it up to the other one. I was having to go in and see him a couple times a year. Wouldn't really tell me much. I mean, everything was kind of secretive, and I didn't really know much about it. And I started over time hearing the liver damage that statin drugs could do, and cardiologist never said a word to me about how hard these are on the liver. So I ended up going and having a physical done, just a random physical with my regular MD. And then they called me up to give me my results. And I'm expecting, a clean bill of health. And they said, no, your liver enzymes are triple of what they're supposed to be. And I was like, what? So, I was in my early 40s. So I was like, what's going on? He asked me, well, are you on a statin? I go, yeah, I am. And right away, my MD said, get off of it now. He said, get off of it. I don't want you to do anything for 30 days. Come back in here and we're going to do, and then we're going to run all the tests again. I said, well, my cardiologist is going to have a fit. He said, you let me deal with him. Sure enough, the very next day, I get a call from my cardiologist because he is not liking that his prescription C all of a sudden now is causing a problem. Mm-hmm. And we went round and round on the phone, and I'd been on this for 5 years. So mind you, this is my 5th year on statins. And it kind of, and I told him this, he said, this doesn't make sense. You should be fine. I go, why should I be fine, doc? It's, I've been on this stuff for 5 years. You never even told me once that the damage or how hard these are on my liver. So, well, that's why I was bringing you in twice a year. I was monitoring it. Well, I said, you might have been monitoring it, but you didn't educate me any on it. I mean, I was totally dumb to all of this stuff. So, I started looking into it, and I was just stunned at the side effects and how they were on the liver and everything. And he, like I said, he still didn't want to believe that it was his drug. To me, I looked at it, I work on cars a lot and whatever, and just being in that kind of world, it just made sense knowing that your liver is your body's filter. It's one of your main body's filters. And just like a car, oil filter, fuel filter, or any kind of filter, your furnace filter in your house, it doesn't matter. They get clogged up over time and you have to change them. So it made sense to me. And I told him this. I said, doc, my liver, you said, you've been monitoring it, but it makes sense after 5 years, my liver's had enough. Yeah. It's had enough. And his response was, nope. He said, if your liver's ever going to have a problem with statins, it's going to be right at the beginning. And I just, that made no sense to me. He literally told me that on the phone. And I was like, no, I'm not buying it. I said, I understand you got all this medical degree and all this, but there's some common sense here. And that just makes no common sense that if I'm going to have problems at my liver over 5 years, you're saying that you should have never had this issue. We never talked again. We ended up kind of getting into with a few other things about it and what his thoughts were, that I had something else going on with steroids and whatnot at the end that might have been causing it, because back then I was a gym rat. He was really reaching for straws. He would not admit that his prescription and what he prescribed and his prognosis of everything was wrong. He would not go there. So we never talked again. And to finish it out, at the end of 30 days, went back and did my test with my medical doctor. My liver enzymes were perfect. Went right back to normal.
Yeah, that's probably the only reason that you had him tell you to take CoQ10 with it is because of an article I wrote for a magazine for doctors when I was in Nevada. And I happened to be interviewing a perinatologist at one point, and we were talking about it. And he was like, oh my God. He said, I didn't know this. And so he said, I'm going to tell all of my colleagues that, we need to be prescribing CoQ10 with it. And I said, yeah, CoQ10 really is a miracle. I mean, it's amazing stuff. And it's very simple. It comes from the food that we eat. And, everything's got to cue something. and the liver puts that all together. So if you damage your liver, yeah, you could damage the CoQ10 production too. And we know the statin drugs are going to interfere with CoQ10. So that brings us to the next thing. And, yeah, you could take supplemental CoQ10. But here's my problem with that. How many people are going to take that regularly, especially when it can be pretty expensive?
Yeah,
And
it
the
is
other
expensive.
statins,
Yeah.
it is, yeah. It is, especially if you have to take a lot of it.
Yeah.
And the other statin side effects are still going to be there. I can tell you plenty of stories about people being prescribed statin drugs and blood pressure drugs at the same time. And some were double or triple dosed because the doctors didn't realize that they were prescribing the same thing under different company names.
Oh, wow.
I mean, well, I could tell you horror stories that just blow your mind. The things that happened that those doctors told them were nothing to worry about. Oh my God. I've even had to yell at a few doctors about their stupidity concerning such things. And it's like, they want to, one of the things is they really think that they've got to give you a blood pressure medication so that your heart will be perfused better. And you go in, you got low blood pressure, and they give you that, and then you start passing out. And they're like, oh yeah, but you woke back up, so you're okay. It's like, oh my God.
I know.
So like what happens if they
Wow.
pass out in the bathroom and crack their head on the toilet or something,
Exactly.
And I mean, we had patients that happened with. And it just is mind-boggling, some of this stuff that people go through that doctors don't know anything about. And they won't admit that they don't know anything. They're just not going to tell you anything.
No. Well, and that goes back to my story. He didn't.
Yeah.
For 5 years, he never told me of the side effects or how hard that was on my liver. Never. And then
Yeah.
when it did come up in a test, he still didn't want to admit it. He didn't want to admit it that it was his drug that caused it, even though when I went back 30 days later, it was, it was obvious. As soon as I got off that statin drug for 30 days, my liver enzymes went back to normal, and I have never done statin drugs ever since.
You don't need them.
No.
You don't really need them.
Yeah, it's crazy. And bring that, so you don't need, but here's another one that came up that I don't, that got popped. So in the process of, that was some of my research too. Okay, what can you do outside of statins? What natural supplements out there? And one that gets brought up a lot is red yeast rice. What are your thoughts on red yeast rice?
It's a natural form of a statin drug.
Is it?
A lot of people took it when it became available and they swore by it, despite me trying to educate them on the problems with it. And so, yeah, it works short term. In fact, it was multi-level at the time when it first gained popularity. So everybody was taking that. Oh my God, it's a miracle. My cholesterol's down, yada, yada.
Right.
So, short term, okay. But then if you take it continuously, it's going to give you the same problems as the pharmaceutical drug.
Wow.
So let me tell you a little bit about red rice yeast that I just pulled this off of the Brave browser summarizer. Red yeast rice contains monocolin K, which is the same as the active ingredient in the cholesterol-lowering drug lovastatin. It may reduce LDL cholesterol and total cholesterol. However, the actual monocolin K content in red yeast rice products can vary widely from 0.1 milligram to 10.9 milligrams. Red yeast rice products that contain significant amounts of monocolin K can have the same potential side effects as statin drugs, including muscle, kidney, and liver damage. They may also cause digestive problems such as diarrhea, nausea, and stomach pain. If you're already taking a statin or other drug to lower cholesterol, you should not take red yeast rice unless directed to do so by a healthcare professional. So there's your red yeast rice.
I never knew that. I've never heard. I think a lot of people don't. You think of it because it's a natural supplement, and you don't. I think most people aren't aware, or don't think of it as actually being a statin and having same statin side effects.
And that's a problem. People don't want to research anything on their own. I've had to tell people, arsenic and cyanide are natural too. I don't recommend that you take them.
Yeah,
So, look things up, people.
that's true.
We have a lot of people, on the chats that ask me for an instant answer. They didn't bother to go and look it up. And you can tell by the way they're asking. Oh, it's like, hey, go do your research first. Learn something because this is your life you're talking about.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah. And all they're concerned about is their pocketbook and their drugs,
Yep.
That's, yeah. So it is. It's all about, taking responsibility. There's an old saying, I used to hear, most people take care of their car better than they take care of their own body.
Yeah.
It's,
Yep.
it's, you get regular oil changes, make sure the tires are rotated, tune ups, everything. But when it comes to their own body, they just don't get, a lot of people, not saying all, but a lot, don't even give it a thought, but they'll spend tons of money and time on making sure their car is running good and looking good and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So with all this talk, so we've gone over the statins, red yeast rice, is also, a natural statin. What can we do if we don't want to take statins? So what are our options?
Now we get into my favorite part. First of all, you change the diet from a junk food diet to a clean, healthy one. And second, supplement with good fatty acids, things like omega-3 fish oils, regularly eating fatty fish like salmon, flounder, cod, sardines, using a high quality extra virgin olive oil or avocado oil, and get some regular exercise like walking or swimming, biking, hiking, playing sports. Eat liver supportive foods like oatmeal, broccoli, coffee, blueberries, almonds, grapefruit, green tea. Add turmeric, oregano, rosemary, ginger, sage, cumin, and cinnamon. Get more fiber in the diet. Ditch the sugars and alcohol, both of which impact the liver greatly. Stop smoking or using nicotine habitually. Smoking actually increases the sticky cholesterol, LDL. And so you'll find a lot of smokers end up having to have angioplasty and stents placed. And, after sometimes the angioplasty works, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Sometimes the stents are okay. A lot of times they clog back up too because people haven't changed anything.
Right.
So then next you're going to look into using Google Sterone, which is Comifora Google, and niacin to flush excess cholesterol out of the tissues, grab it, and carry it out of the body. Now, research this before you try it or go to a holistic doctor that knows how to do that. And I have discussed this on the chats. And
I've never heard of Google Sterone. I'm familiar with the benefits of niacin. I have never heard of Google Sterone.
You do them both together. The reason you do them
Okay.
together is, the Google is a resin. So for those that have kidney problems, no, because resins are really hard on the kidneys. This is why you need a doctor to help you with it.
Right.
But basically, Google will grab the cholesterol and just carry it harmlessly out of the body in the poop. And the niacin helps to flush it out. So you take full flush niacin. The non-flush stuff doesn't work because you want to flush the excess cholesterol out into the bloodstream where then the Google will grab it and carry it out. If you don't use Google with the niacin, you risk harming liver. Because you go up to about 1,000 milligrams a day of niacin. That takes a while to work up to that because it's painful otherwise.
Yes.
Because of the flush. But if you don't take something like Google with it, then you're going to have excess cholesterol in the bloodstream going through the liver, second pass through the liver, and that can damage the liver. So you need to know how to use this stuff carefully, and you do this on an empty stomach. But also, if you're one of the retired people that goes to a lot of buffets and stuff, and, you just can't resist those fried foods, you can take that stuff, with your food, and it'll grab most of the fat out of the food and carry it out of the body.
It's like a binder? Is Google Sterone like a binder for cholesterol?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it attracts the cholesterol and grabs it. So now there's a lot of things that people don't realize how easy it is to treat this kind of stuff, really, if you know what you're doing. I had one case. This was an untreated diabetic female in her 50s. And she had a fasting blood sugar of 470, but she claimed she wasn't diabetic. And I was like, yeah, you are. She had a total cholesterol of 499 and
Wow.
triglycerides of about 1200 with a low HDL. We
Wow.
brought that all back to normal levels in 1 week with
1 week.
naturopathic treatment and supplementation. Yeah.
Wow.
And one of my friends was a really smart internal medicine doc that was really into the holistic treatments. And she had written all this, disclaimer that the patient had to sign and gave her a fistful of prescriptions. And, she made her sign this hold harmless thing. And so the lady comes to me and she says, "Do I have to do this?" I said, "Nah, don't worry about it." So I put her on the proper supplements and, told her to get 20 minutes of exercise a day, aerobic exercise. And, in 1 week, we redo the blood and everything was back to normal. There's no pharmaceutical drugs that can do that,
No.
especially do it safely. So my friend, the internal medicine doc, freaked out. She was like, "Oh my God, I can't even do this with drugs." I said, "I know. That's why I'm in this branch of medicine. I already know about allopathic medicine." Me too.
Well, this has been, I think, very helpful and very eye-opening for many people. Like I said, this has always been a topic that's always been one that I've discussed many times and always, like I said, have personal experience with it. So I'm so thankful for your input and information, Dr. Val.
Oh, thank
And
you.
thank you for being here in our healthy living. And I want to thank everybody for coming. Is there anything you want to add before we sign off here?
No, I think that was pretty much enough information to have people thinking about that for a while.
I think so. So at that, I'll just say thanks to everybody for watching another Healthy Living show. And we'll see you for the next one.